everybody. So, today, me and Michael are going to be talking about The Mandalorian, Star Wars, American Westerns, spaghetti Westerns, and how they parallel to Mandalorian and Star Wars. So, we've been watching The Mandalorian for, I guess, when did the last one come out? Like last December?
Well, I've been watching it for about 7 years.
7 years.
Wow.
So I actually have not seen the new episode as of today, so there won't be any spoilers for today's.
I did.
Which this is Friday the what? 20th. So we got Snoke back there fact checking us for anything we come up with, and so let's start with the beginning of Mandalorian, I guess, right? So let's talk about what we know going into Mandalorians before this show begins. Like that's a good place to start.
Like the first, like what we know of the culture.
Yeah, like so. Say what we would know of Mandalorians pre the first episode, right? Because
are you talking Legends or canon now?
I think we should just specify which, but go into Legends. So it's so Mando, which is it Jin or Din? How do you
Jin? I think is how they.
Okay.
No, Din Djarin.
Okay, cool. Din. So. Prior to this, so our first example of Mandalorian is obviously Boba Fett originally, right? So that's where we get he has his Fett sigil, and he has the mastodon skull, which in Star Wars is the what do they ride?
Mythosaur.
Mythosaur, yeah. So that is based off of an actual real world mastodon skull, is what that is.
Which also was used as a prop in The Lion King.
Yeah,
they slide down those same one they borrowed. Sorry, continue.
There is, so speaking of that though, in Force Awakens, there is a full size mythosaur skull at the outside the cantina where they go meet Large Madge or whatever her name is, Small Madge, Butthole Eyes,
Butthole Fries.
yeah. And the Mandalorian sigil is on a flag above her door with all those flags of everybody who's like, I guess, welcome there is kind of the idea with that. So that's the first time we see Mandalorian on screen, or the symbol, outside of the prequels, original movies, and we've seen them a lot in Clone Wars, obviously, right? But we have sort of a newer take on Mandalorians in Clone Wars, or even potentially different than what we see of. So I guess go back to Boba here. So Boba has now been, I think, according to Disney, uncannoned Mandalorian.
Where did that happen? I still missed kind of like where did they write that decree?
So I believe this spawns from the fact that they uncannoned Jango Fett, right? I know. So
Jango was unchained.
Yeah, he was unchained. So original Legends now. Original canon is that Jango Fett is a Mandalorian, and as John has told me before, he trained, right? So going a little bit of that, John.
Yes.
We got John Green over there behind the.
Yeah, I think he. I'm not sure if it's Legends now or if it's canon, but he got like 75 hunters from around or mercenaries or something from around the galaxy that he handpicked, and then him with his team of mercenaries or whatever, that they were the ones that trained the clones. I'm sorry, there was more than there was more than 75. 75 of them were Mandalorians.
Oh, that's cool.
And so that's probably obviously not canon now.
Yeah.
But so the first set of clones were said to have like Mandalorian songs that they knew, and they would sing together.
That's so dope. Mandalorian folk. I wonder if there's any of those like.
Do they have accordions?
Yeah.
And Palpatine was said to have really not been so keen on that because he felt like it bred individualism, or not individualism, but loyalty to something other than...
Yeah. Well, and back then, the Mandalorians in canon, like old Legends, were a big problem at some point.
Yeah,
for the,
that's very true.
Yeah. So another thing I remember reading about was that the influence for the John, what is the ship that the clones ride in, where it's like open sides? That's like their ground ship.
Oh, just the gunship. Yeah.
Yeah.
I forget the exact model.
Can you find us that exact model?
Yeah.
So that gunship is based off of Mandalorian designs that we know.
Sorry, LAAT.
All right, cool. So that ship is based off of Mandalorian designs that we know from stuff like the Knights of the Old Republic games. 1 and 2, it's like KOTOR 1 and 2, where we see a fair amount of Mando stuff, and in the Bounty Hunter PlayStation 2 game, Jango's original ship, which looks a lot like Mando and the Mandalorian's ship.
Really?
Yeah, it's probably pretty. And there's also another Mando that Jango is sort of his like, it's like the big antagonist of the game, who has a very similar ship. So always have these big like sort of winged out, connected like turbine looking engines on the side. So that's a very Mandalorian design for the ships.
Interesting.
So now, to my knowledge, when Jango becomes uncannoned is, and John and I were talking about this the other day, that it might have something to do with just the crappiness of the costume that he was given, where there's a scene when he's fighting Obi-Wan where we see that chest plate bend, right? So as far as I know, that is what uncannons the fact that Jango had Beskar armor. And he had, I guess, maybe something similar to, what are they, plasteel? Is that what they call it?
Yeah, I believe so.
So that's like, would be closer to a stormtrooper's armor.
So you're saying that the prop bent a little bit.
Yes.
And now
it's when he's got that cable and the chest bends over, but that's like such a, which you'd think we could crack that up to, but you know how Star Wars is. It's like somebody has like a keychain and it's like, or the ice cream machine, you know, it's like something becomes like that literally, like as soon as it's on screen, that has to be either, you know what I mean? It's like canon, uncanon.
That's why Tamora Morrison's coming back, because he's just so pissed.
He's peed off, man.
Me too.
So that. Oh, go ahead, John.
It just says that it was made of plastoid composite.
Okay, plastoid composite. So now basically where that puts Boba as, so episode 2 writes him in as a clone, which a lot of fans were really upset about that originally, because it told you who Boba was as a kid. So all of a sudden it starts basically knowledge of Boba, and part of his thing was nobody knew anything about him, right? He was just this like, which obviously the more and more comics and books that came out, the more we learned. But I think the fact that he was a clone of someone else was sort of a letdown for some people. Just that it was like he was just not. Oh,
there's Toby.
So, and I don't think that was a huge deal, because it was like, now you're like, okay, well, we know whose dad is or whatever.
Yeah.
But then when you unmando Jango, and I think, do you know how old Boba was when Jango was beheaded by Mace Windu, John?
I do not.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Oh.
If you haven't made it to episode 2 yet.
Being that he was said he was obviously an unaltered clone, said he was about 10 years old.
Okay.
Again, 32 BBY.
Okay, sure. So 10 years old. That means that he only potentially probably spent like 7 conscious years with a real Mandalorian. So then in Clone Wars, he takes off with Aurra Sing, as far as I know, spends majority of his teenage years with her. And you see those episodes where like they blow up Jango's helmet with the bomb inside. Aurra helps him try to kill Mace. So that would mean basically, as far as what we know, Boba has, according to Disney, 0 Mandalorian connection.
He's just a bounty hunter.
Yes. But we do know now from Mando that the Boba armor is Beskar. So that is a kind of an interesting little tidbit, you know, and for some reason he has armor that looks just like a Mandalorian's when his dad had, you know, it's like why would he be connected to having armor that still looked like that if there wasn't some sort of like...
I just don't feel like it's even that hard of a jump just to say Jango had plastoid armor made.
Yeah, well, we see Mando's armor when it's not all Beskar.
Yeah, and it's like, and he was just wearing it because he's on Camino. What's going to happen on Camino?
Yeah.
It's like, why not? Why wear the heavy stuff?
It's like party armor.
Exactly. Could be a good suit of party armor.
I've read something recently that said that Jango chose that armor in the new canon that he's not Mandalorian, that he chose that armor just because of the reputation the Mandalorians had. It was just a status thing.
It just really bugs me that the 2 original Mandalorians are not Mandalorians, but everybody else is. Mm-hmm. Like that really...
They were just using it as a fear tactic,
that whole original canon was written around those characters, and then the 2, it's like as if you found out like John Wayne, actually he was the only guy who wasn't a cowboy. So then and all that stuff, it's like okay, but speaking of John Wayne's son is the body for Mando in episode 5 of season 1, the gunslinger one,
dude,
which is cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so that gets us pretty well up to, I guess. So then we have the Clone Wars stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So Mandalore, the planet, now has a queen in Clone Wars. What was her name, John?
Duchess
Satine.
Duchess Saltine.
Yeah. So this is the one that Obi-Wan falls in love with. So, which it's been so long since I've watched all that of Clone Wars, but if my memory serves me, her thing is wanting to push Mandalore to, or is it the planet of Mandalore? Mm-hmm. Yeah, towards a more peaceful existence, right? So then you have are the Night Watch the first ones that show up in the blue armor, who are sort of her?
No. Or you mean Death Watch?
Death Watch, yes.
Death Watch was the ones that were loyal to Darth Maul. Is that correct, Michael?
But then the Night Watch.
Oh,
because
Night Owls,
there's two factions.
Night Owls.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are the ones in the blue armor.
Okay, yeah. So that's the ones we see really, really quick out the gate, and then it's a very more militaristic form of that creed, where they all have fairly, for the most part, matching armor.
Which is a really interesting throwback to, the Mandalorian helmet design is very reminiscent of Greek helmets with that T visor, and even I think Brad mentioned the other day that the Corinthian, Boba and Jango and the clones, they have just that straight T.
Yeah.
I think it's the armor where she actually has it's actually shaped.
I think Bo does too, doesn't she, on hers?
I
think Bo-Katan's is more like a olive or
yeah. And that's that's just straight Greek helmet. I think Corinthian is generally what that's called, but I mean a lot of the Greek helmets. So this when you talk about Death Watch, mm-hmm. The Spartans lived very much in a similar way, where if you were a male Spartan between the ages of X and X, you did not have a profession. You were a soldier, mm-hmm. and you were in the army. And if you need food as a Spartan state, you went and you enslaved your neighbors, and you said, "Hey, grow me some wheat," and you just did that. And they wouldn't. I think they would do things like they would intentionally not feed you enough, so you would have to steal food. If you got caught stealing food, you'd be punished. But you were punished not because you were stealing food, but you were punished because you were caught. And they would have these weird things, and there's some dish they had where there was blood and vinegar in it. It was nasty, and they would and you weren't allowed. All the men slept in the men's hut, and they would be married, but they wouldn't give. You wouldn't sleep at home with your wife. You had to sneak out, to go spend time with your wife. But you couldn't get caught. It was they really had these weird things like that. And
everything was built into training.
Yeah, and your furniture, they said that you couldn't own a piece of furniture that couldn't be made with an axe, a saw, and I think there was maybe a hammer. There was 3 tools they were allowed to use, and they couldn't use any other tools. So everything was, so you get the term Spartan. Yeah. It's very simple. So the Death Watch always reminded me of that, where it's their whole way of living is very goal-oriented towards being the best fighters.
Do you, I don't know if this may not be even something that but did the Spartan male build his own house with those 3 tools, or was he did he have to sneak around to build a house? He's for 9 months he's sneaking around trying to build a table.
I don't know. I don't think that was
because I know the slave labor thing was a big thing with them.
Yeah, but that became a real big problem, which I think is, to some degree, I'd assume is built into the Death Watch, because they're on the moon. of Mandalore, right?
I think so. Yeah, I don't remember.
And Sparta was, a very small state, and
sure.
I think at one point they fought Thessaly. I think that's the wrong city, but they fought somebody, and they had a very rigid way of doing things, and that was, they were the best at that fighting, that phalanx.
Mm-hmm.
And the Sacred Band, Thebes. So the Sacred Band, they fought, and when you do these phalanxes, you're in those little shield walls, and the Sacred Band from Thebes, they like swung at them at a pivoted angle.
Wow.
And so they didn't go straight on like everybody had done for hundreds of years. They swung at them, and it just totally, and it was like something like half, because the entire Spartan male population was there in that army right then.
Mm-hmm.
And you're only talking about, a couple hundred people at that time.
Yeah.
Because it's one city. And like half of the Spartan male population died, or something like. Wow. It was just like an insane amount of the whole population of the city died in that day.
That's crazy.
And I don't know if they talk about like populations with Death Watch, how many people there are, but the fact that they're dealing with foundlings, they're trying to bring people in.
So now, Death Watch are the one that Mando's the part of. I keep getting these names mixed up. But Death Watch is... So what is the name of the ones who are directly opposed to Satine? They want to be more militaristic, but it's the one I believe Bo is crewed up with, right?
Well, I don't know if they would be considered the Resistance at that point, but when...
Because at this point we have 3 factions of Mandos we're talking about.
Yeah, so the Death Watch is the ones that are loyal to Darth Maul, and they are the more... militaristic, and opposed to the pacifist government of Duchess Satine.
And if I'm not mistaken, in Clone Wars, there is no acknowledgement, basically, of deviation from the religion, which is what we're seeing with actual Mando, which is basically like a separate sect of the Mandalorian creed, then, right? So that might even be another offshoot from that, from the Death Watch, right?
Yeah.
So there was something you said that it's interesting that basically Mando or Boba and Jango are modeled after cowboys, but were given Greek influenced armor. So, but then later they became
Toby.
It makes you wonder if in any way the original armor for those characters influenced the fact that they ended up becoming more Greek-like, in culture. Did later they're like, well, this would make sense that...
Yeah, that the writing of the whole people around them became...
it was more... Whereas before they were just a couple cowboys.
Because, I think you told me a little bit about this, where Boba Fett was originally just a toy, right?
Yes. So Boba Fett was originally a mail order action figure in between episode 4 and 5 out of the Star Wars magazine, I believe. And he was pre-order. You could order him from the magazine before anybody knew who he was. And he just came in a brown tube. He didn't even have a card back. So there are no packaged original Boba Fett toys because there wasn't a packaging. So then he sold so well, that was actually a big influence of even having him be something of relevance in the movies,
So really his costume design is what made the Mandalorians relevant.
Yes.
They even exist.
Yes, yeah, wow. Yeah, and he, to think that, he's even, he might not have even been included if that toy hadn't sold well. It's kind of wild, too. It's like an example of where the toy surpassed the movie. A lot like the Transformer stuff we talk about, but we can talk about that some other time. But, yeah, so that gets us up to the really cool stuff we've seen in Mando now we've got the more militaristic Mandalorians who are following this sort of Clone Wars idea of Mandalorians, and then we've got the Mando, and it's Jin, right? I feel like, is it Jin?
Din.
Okay.
Din Djarin.
Din Djarin. Gosh, I don't know why I messed that one up so bad. Din Djarin. I've just been calling him Mando for the past 40 years. So Din Djarin, he seems to be more reminiscent of what we get in the Knights of the Old Republic games. right? Like where they always have their helmets on, like the old, like, and he, you know, he's talking about Mandalore, which, if I'm not mistaken, is that one that we see depicted with the red cape, and he sort of almost has like a weird shell mask going on. Like, I think that was in a lot of those older Mando scenarios, they would make a lot of their stuff they were wearing from things they'd killed, which is why Boba has the scalped Wookiee pelts over his shoulder, or the Wookiee scalps.
Yeah,
you know. So we have this sort of a more orthodox, and I pointed that I find it interesting in today's culture where the like orthodox religious person is not generally the ones that are smiled upon culturally as much right now, but our character we've been made to love is the religious zealot of the episode, or the series, and that they're kind of almost treating him like he's outdated and like a crazy person because he follows the old ways, you know.
Yeah, which I think they really did a nice job of enforcing his, you know, spoiler alert if you haven't seen episode 3 of season 2 yet, but you know, when he says this is there is only one way, and just shoots off, and you're just like, oh yeah, all right. I think that was it is good, and you know,
I hope the message that we get from this is not that one of them has to mold to the other, and that they either, which I have a feeling they're just going to end up facing off, but like, you know,
I don't know. I'm going to put my money on. I mean, just, you know, I think I like that we see multiple points of view in that, and I don't want either of them to cave.
Yeah.
I think what's going to happen, though, is I think they're going to convince Mando to take off his mask at some point.
What I think is going to happen is they're not going to cave on it, and I think the potential two themes are people with varying beliefs can coincide, or they can't. And I don't think either of them are going to cave. And I think the fact that they've introduced the idea of they've spoken Mandalore, and we know that Bo-Katan is gunning for Mandalore, and I have a feeling personally somehow Boba's going to be wrapped up weird in that. And I've got a theory that somehow throughout the journey of Mandalorian, we're going to have Din is going to basically sort of somehow they'll have to work together, and Din will actually officially make Boba into an orthodox Mandalorian, and he'll end up having to self-sacrifice himself to save Din, or for a cause, or for Baby Yoda, and he'll give him a "this is the way" and just shoot off into a Sarlacc mouth and get. I think we will see him die. Yeah, I think we will see him become a Mandalorian. I think they will recanon him as Mandalorian because I feel like these writers, that is a thing they'll want, and then I think they will give him a valiant death.
That would be,
and
not just getting shot off by a malfunctioning rocket.
I think Robot Chicken had it right when they said he just got really hammered out there on the skiff or the sail barge, and just did not have any idea he was going to have to not be hammered. So when time came, he was just shit-faced when he was flying sideways through the...
I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because he was at the bar when we see him on the skiff. He's standing at the bar.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Just kind of one of these numbers?
Well, that would, if he's, you know, not a orthodox Mandalorian, he could take his helmet off and drink. And
maybe he's got one of those little camelbacks. Where he's just got a little straw and...
that brought up an interesting thing I thought in episode 3 was that there is no breathing apparatus in a Mandalorian helmet. And we see, you know, it's like when he gets in the water, he's drowning, right? And it's like, and you'd think, I would have thought, at least if the little device we see in episode 1 that Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon take, like they've got like a harmonica in their pocket, they can just, so it's like, you'd think you just put that in helmets that you could just flip on, like just if you needed to put your mouth on it and breathe, you know, like if you're in space or whatever situation where you need to breathe, you'd have some sort of like converter or something. So, oh man, I got off on the tangent there where I was going.
I just read something interesting here. This is going back a little bit, but the name of the heavy Mandalorian that we see, you have a toy of it.
Yeah, I think they just call him like Armored Mando or something.
Go ahead.
Nope.
It says here his name is Paz Vizsla.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, yeah, and then Pre Vizsla was the name of the Mandalore or I don't know if he was ever. It's so confusing, but
Yeah.
he was definitely on the Death Watch side. He was on Maul's.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So they have the same name or same
I
family name.
want to get into an interesting theory you have on that, but first I want to finish the. So what I think is going to happen is I think we're going to have a Jon Snow sort of scenario here, where Bo is going to be gunning for Mandalore. There's going to be a bunch of Mandalorians, and they're going to want Din.
She's got red hair.
Yeah. So like I think. And maybe not some sort of like love interest. I'm more thinking like there's going to be a faction that are like, no, Din needs to be Mandalore. He's the one. He is the true Mandalore. Like this sort of like, for some reason he needs to be the king. He's the Aragorn of the scenario. It's not, you know what I mean?
But he's gonna pass it up to.
Yeah, he's gonna pass it up, or the climax of all this is we see him take it. You know, it's like because he's doesn't think she should be the leader of the Mandalorians because she does not follow the true creed or something. You know, I mean, I feel like we could go into a lot with that stuff, but
I hope you guys can hear Toby meowing.
Yeah, I don't know how they couldn't. So John, talk about your thoughts on the armorer, because I find that Toby over here.
So as we know, the sect of Mandalorians that were loyal to Darth Maul when he was Mandalore were the more militaristic ones, and that's kind of the creed, so to speak, that we see Jen having. Right? Am I saying that right?
Let's just call him Jim.
Jim.
I keep thinking it is spelled D-J-I-M, so I'm like Jim. But I know it's.
All right.
Here, just pull it up.
I'm just gonna pull this up.
We only learned his name. Like they didn't tell us till.
If you guys would watch it with subtitles, you'd see how it's spelled.
Oh yeah.
But it is D-I-N-D-J-A-R-I-N.
That's where I'm getting the.
No, see, that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so it's like Django. It's Din Djarin. Okay.
So
Django, another Western reference.
Yeah, good one too. We'll get to the Westerns in a second for all you poor folks that tuned in for that.
So I was gonna say we noticed that the armorer's helmet has the Zabrak horns on it, or something. They're not
reminiscent of.
They're very subtle. Yeah. They're very subtle, as if referring to something from the past.
There aren't many things that have horns on it like that other than Zabrak too, so that's it.
And as soon as Maul took over Mandalore, all of the Death Watch had those on their helmets,
which is the coolest Mandalorian armor ever.
Agreed. Yeah, so that's so.
Aren't they painted like his tattooing too? Like
it's
so cool.
Yeah, so that would definitely line up. You know, so that's going to be a weird thing where all the Mandalorians that we know from the show that we've kind of have been made heroes are in reality on the bad side, so to speak.
They'll be to the adversaries to our new hero.
Yeah. Which also, did you notice? I just noticed this, that Bo's helmet does have the owl eyes on it.
Yes. Yeah.
That's really cool.
The voice thing, that was another thing that supported that.
Which on the owl thing, another throwback to Greek stuff. But the Athens was they said they were founded by Athena. That's why they're called Athens, and their her animal is the owl, which is supposed to be a very wise creature, and because it can look all the way around.
Oh, yeah.
Because it can see everything, and because it, so the owl. If you see the statue of Athena, she's got.
He's watching. When you like pull on, it's got legs like John though, when you pull the feathers up on an owl.
Dude, yeah, they've got those honking claws, man. They're horrible. Like my wife. So this is totally an aside, but my wife works with birds sometimes, and raptors specifically. So very sharp birds, and so she came home the other day and just ran in the house. I mean, full sprint, like, get a cardboard box, we gotta go. And I'm like in my PJs, like, been drinking rum for an hour, like, what? And we get in the car, and she had there had been an owl that had been hit, and it's like this big, just standing in the middle of the road, and
by your house,
like half a mile.
Oh wow,
in the road, and it had been hit, So it was just sitting there on the road, and she was like, well, we got to get this out. I know exactly where to take it, and my friend can get this, checked out. Apparently, if you take an owl and just throw something over it, it's like a baby. It's like, oh, nothing exists now. It's fine. And those things are nasty if you get if they claw you or anything, so
if he'd gotten out of the cardboard box on you in the car,
dude, it'd been over. But she just took a towel, threw it over him, picked him up, and he was just like, it's fine. She just set him in a cardboard box very gently, put him in the car, we took him to the vet. He's fine.
Wow.
He's been released into the wild now, and we named him Bo. No. I'm sorry, John. I'm sorry for the interruption there, but owls are associated with Greek stuff too, so I like that keeps coming back in the Mandalorians.
Mm-hmm.
Continue.
So how I came across this theory, which if you Google it, there's plenty of information on it, but I came across it in the wild, honestly, by watching a video about Ahsoka actually, and it was playing a clip from Clone Wars where Bo is watching Ahsoka from a distance.
Okay.
And one of the other night owls, or one of her cronies,
the Hooters,
one of her Hooters, says something about Ahsoka being a sorcerer, which the armor refers to.
Oh.
Yeah, it says something about her being a sorcerer, and it is the armorer's voice. Now, that particular extra in that episode of Clone Wars does not have as far as I can tell, an attributed voice actor.
Okay.
To go along with that, but it is Emily Swallow is her name that does the armorer's voice. Uh-huh. It is her voice. I guarantee it.
Whoa.
So that's what put me down this path where I was thinking that the armor, was possibly in the Clone Wars shows, but that would not line up with
the time
her being part of Death Watch.
Yes.
So it could just be a coincidence, but maybe there's something where she switched sides.
Yeah, maybe she deviated to be more orthodox.
It is strange that it is her voice, and she referred to them as a sorcerer.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. That I feel like Filoni and Favreau put enough thought into this.
Yeah.
That something like that couldn't be totally a coincidence.
It also wouldn't be totally out of the question. It'd just be a cool Easter egg too. We get that a lot, but. So it's cool that all the Greek stuff has been coming up because I didn't expect all that. But so let's get into the so Star Wars being a space western, basically, right?
Yeah.
So original. So and when it comes to looking at old school westerns, there are some westerns as old as the 20s, which I didn't really realize until recently. But I feel like a lot of the ones that we think about still are from the 60s. That's kind of like our first, there's some from the 50s, but the 60s is when you really start getting that's when the spaghetti western is born, for one. 64 is when the first one comes out. So prior to that, the American western is really hard cut, good and bad, right? So we see that a lot in the old trilogy for sure, where there's literally good and bad people, and the idea of being in between is you don't do that or something bad happens. If a Jedi were to be somewhere in the idea of gray Jedi is whoa, you know.
And Han Solo has to pick a side by the end.
Yeah, and a Sith cannot use good. It's why can't they? Why do they have to keep pushing so far that they can't go back and use the healing thing, which is supposed to be sort of a Jedi deal. But that's also old canon now too, because I don't think the Knights of the Old Republic games are in that anymore, which is kind of where that idea comes from. Okay. I think that's actually might be where the first example of Force healing comes from, which we do see in Mandalorian. Baby Yoda can do it, and technically in the Last Jedi, it's they almost seem to be giving them something though, because for some reason Kylo can't live through it.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Toby.
So you have a very American Western point of view in the original trilogy, where there's good and bads. It's sort of we were talking about, like, a lot of those early Westerns are just retelling of King Arthur stories, because they were trying to put them in a more, you think Westerns coming out in the 20s and 30s, cowboys were around like 15 years prior.
Yeah.
So the idea of taking...
Well, and Wyatt Earp died in the 20th century, didn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, the OK Corral was...
There were actors, pallbearers at his funeral.
Man.
So like...
Which, I'm sorry, always have to say this, Wyatt Earp, me, born in the same town. Monmouth, Illinois. Please continue.
Well, born there, but soon relocated.
Yeah. He was only there for about 6 months, but,
So...
The town wasn't big enough for the two of us.
Then you have the samurai movie kind of thing start trickling into. So, well, obviously Star Wars is influenced by samurai movies. They are using.
They got swords.
Yeah, they got swords
and robes.
Yeah, I mean they have a code that they have to live by. It's like
and the Force is very Buddhist.
Sure.
Which I don't. I don't want to say that I don't think technically Buddhism in Japan are connected. Sure. But I think from Lucas is pulling from the East, so he's getting those things.
And sort of an idea that you dedicate your life to this thing, and every day you're, meditating and working towards it and whatnot. So you have we'll be able to, it's John, can you look it up? Yojimbo and Seven Samurai. It's Akira. His last name I always say wrong, but
Kurosawa.
Yeah. So Kurosawa does two of the bigger, more influential movies ever made are Yojimbo and Seven Samurai. There's an anime called Samurai 7 that was huge. I mean, like, every show ever has an episode dedicated to Seven Samurai. There's an episode in Clone Wars where Obi-Wan and Anakin, I think Ahsoka's there. They gather up Holdo. Is it Hondo?
Hondo.
Holdo's the purple hair chick. Hondo and a couple other people to essentially go face off with these bandits, right? So that's the idea of Seven Samurai. Okay, so Magnificent Seven, the Western, comes out in 1960. So that one is a pretty American idea, where there are 7 good guys who come in and they're fighting off a bandit group of definite bad guys, to defend a town. So that is the story of the Seven Samurai, Magnificent Seven. So then you have Yojimbo, which is what... So the first I guess let's go why, I guess, first. Spaghetti Western. The term comes from the fact that they were made in Italy, right? So you had it was Sergio Leone is the guy who wrote and directed those. You have Ennio Morricone did all the music for them. So that's where you get the stuff, and a lot of which he recently actually just passed away, unfortunately. But for budgetary reasons and the fact that Italy looks basically just like New Mexico, which is kind of a weird, just happens so. So Clint Eastwood goes out to Italy. So now I guess we'd probably be in the year 1963. So we've had a big samurai influence that was a huge success in the Magnificent Seven in 1960. So I guess Sergio's like, well, let's do the other big one, which is Yojimbo, right? So the idea in that one is the main protagonist is peddling several different groups of bad people against each other to be able to actually defeat them, because he's only one guy, right?
Interesting.
But it's to kind of save a town type idea again. So as far as the Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns, which there are tons of spaghetti westerns after these successful ones, is 64 you have A Fistful of Dollars. 65 you have For a Few Dollars More, and 66 you have probably, I think on IMDb's website it's still in the top 10 movies ever made, which is The Good and the Bad and the Ugly. Also known as Euro Westerns, for similar films that were not made or didn't have anything to do with Italians. Interesting. Wow. Yeah. So that trilogy is referred to as the Man with No Name trilogy, and there's a lot of really cool fan theories into like, is that the same people in different universes? Because of budgetary reasons and just who was there, they used like all the same actors for all of them, but the stories are different, right?
The Mando with no name.
Yes, yeah, and he didn't have. I mean, he didn't have a name forever.
Yeah.
So that is an interesting parallel there, even. So the whole premise of, or I don't know if it was necessarily designed to be this way, but American Westerns have been pretty good, or pretty cut and dry, good and bad. So Sergio Leone basically creates these Westerns where there is no, everybody's gray. There's no hardline goods. There's no hardline bads. You know, every sheriff has a drinking problem and indulges in prostitution, and the pastors are drunk. They're people, you know, like reality. So you have the idea, or that start where now American Westerns are away, good and bad, and Italian spaghetti Westerns are now their theme, and because those have been so successful, most of the ones after that are that same idea, that there is no good and bad and everything is gray. So I think, I'd say the whole original trilogy is pretty American Western-y in that sense. You know, it's like, even if you get into the kind of the grittiness of Empire, I still don't see a lot of like flopping on the main characters.
Yeah.
You know? So I think Rogue One might be one of the first times we see a main character who is our protagonist good guy who does something really, like, shoots that dude in the face, like the first scene he's in.
Yeah.
So, and you'd brought up an interesting thing to where almost what they had to do to get away from that good and the bad, because Star Wars in of itself, the Force is good and bad. You know, it's like Jedi are good, Sith are bad. Yeah. They had to remove the Force from it.
Yeah, you had to start dealing with characters who are not Force sensitive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just people. You know, it's like who don't have a magic that can get them out of situations. You know, it's like they have to just figure out how to survive. So, and you know, Rogue One also has what's the character's name played by Forrest Whitaker, and
Saw Gerrera.
Yes, so he's in that movie. Right?
Yeah,
and
a rebel, but generally considered to be a bad person.
Yes, because of the you know, he will do very extreme things for the greater cause. You know,
Borgullet will know.
Yeah,
my favorite line.
So, so then we get into Mando, right? So Mando is very Italian.
Can I just make an aside here?
Yes.
And I apologize.
Yeah, no, please.
But
please.
So we're just about to get back into Mando, but I wanted to jump back to, you know, you're talking about Westerns being a retelling of King Arthur stories. And so the King Arthur story is as, you know, archetypal as we know in the Western society, you know, as far as, you know, finding the Holy Grail, we got to, you know, save Guinevere, all this sort of thing. You know, you get into America and you're like, okay, well, we're going west, and now there's a new frontier that everybody's excited about. So it's like, we just redress those same archetypal stories.
Sure.
So you still got your main character is King Arthur. It's Galahad, you know, and those are, you know, his name's Tom now or John, but like it's still an archetypal character. So that's why they're so good. They're all good, and the bad guys are all bad.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's, you know, I don't think that's. I guess I just wanted to be. I don't. This it's a bit of simplicity on the side of these early westerns where it's just so good, and I don't think that's simplicity in the sense that it's like bad writing. I think that's just a part of, you know, where it's coming from, is that they take this archetypal story and it just dives right into the American West, and there is a little bit of like, well, okay, but, you know, that's the archetype you shoot for, not who people really are on an everyday basis.
Well, and people want to be good.
Yeah.
You know, and that's another thing with the person you relate to is all good.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's but I like when you start off right saying this is a, you know, Star Wars is a space western, which is to say it's a King Arthur story. Because it is not, in the official sense, technically science fiction, because anybody who, you know, is really into the technical side of science fiction, it, you know, will make that distinction between a fantasy which is set in space and science fiction where, you know, you have to have some sort of scientific knowledge or the laws of science, a question in science or a law will play into the plot to some significant way. I think of the Nightfall, which is one of the biggest Isaac Asimov stories, where I think it came out in like the 30s, one of his bigger stories right out the gate. This planet had two suns, and they were opposite. It wasn't like Tatooine where they were on one side, so you have night and day. They were consistently, so there was no nighttime. And so, but then there was they were doing calculations as far as, well, we're seeing there's a little bit of drift in the planet, so we think an eclipse is coming, and then that eclipse comes, and spoiler alert, and then you have this civilization that doesn't know what darkness is, and then it happens, and it's like the whole plot is based around astronomy, to a great degree, and
actual science.
And so like that's science, hard science fiction. So you come back to Star Wars, and it's they're trying to save the gal. Yeah, they're trying to defeat the bad guy, the bad wizard. It's like that's fantasy again. Yeah, and
it's like it's not really a different story than Super Mario Brothers, even. It's the.
And there's but the idea that there are good and bad. You had mentioned even biblical examples of this.
Sure.
And Jephthah was the first guy I thought of because in
my name is Jephthah.
Are you there? Can you hear me? So there was a time, and I think it's in the book of Judges where this happens. But Israel is without a king, without a judge. They're just kind of there, and the Ammonites come in. And Jephthah is a son of a prostitute, so he doesn't really have a dad. They don't really his neighbors really don't recognize him.
He's a son of a bitch.
Ooh. Technically, yes. So his neighbors don't really see. They're like, you don't have part of our inheritance. You're not in good standing. You're a prostitute's kid. And he's like, well, if you guys, I'm going to be over here, Yeah. He's not really a good guy. And I don't mean that because he's a son of a prostitute, but he doesn't like bother with their being a decent person because they don't like him. Anyway, then the Ammonites come in and they start raiding and stuff. And, the Israelites are like, well, man, it would sure be nice if we had some really badass guy who could just, show us how to kick some ass.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, remember that guy over there that we pissed on? Let's go. So they go to him and they're like, hey, so we need your help. And he's like, all right, well, I'll help you, but if we win, I'm in charge. And they're like, okay.
I'm fluent in over 6 million forms of kicking your ass.
Yeah, so they go and they kick the Ammonites out, and he becomes one of the judges that's listed in the book of Judges. He is never at any point referred to as a good guy.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the things that he's famous for is he says, he makes a vow that, all right, if we go and we win, I will sacrifice the first thing that comes out of my house. And this is in a time when people kept animals in their houses on the lower level. The heat rises, and so anyway, his daughter's the first thing out of his house. Oof. When they win, and he sacrifices her.
Damn.
And that I think the story just tells it like that, and so then some people will think that like, oh yeah, well the Bible tells you to sacrifice your daughter, and it's like no, that's a terrible thing. It never said that was a good thing. Actually,
sure.
I think the point of that is watch your mouth. But he's never described as a good guy.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about characters being good and bad, he's a necessary guy, which I think is a weird character. So coming back to John, who's raised his hand.
I was just reading an article here about the parallels between samurai movies and spaghetti westerns and The Mandalorian.
Cool.
And this
somebody's already done this thing.
Well, I don't think it's it's not a secret. But this is written by Dr. Musad Al-Razoki, and he said in 2017 he was on a trip to Japan and saw a movie called Wolf with Child in Tow.
What?
And then it's I don't know how to say that word. Against the Winds of Death, or as it is known in the West, Lone Wolf with Cub, Baby Cart to Hades. And
oh my gosh,
it just follows the story of a samurai in feudal Japan where his son is following him around, and they battle Ronin and
oh my gosh,
Sith Lords in the First Order. And things
That's
like
cool.
That. But,
so you're saying that there is a movie out there, and we can know how Mandalorian ends if we go on.
yeah, quite possibly.
So how do you spell Jeth's name?
It's Jeph.
Oh my god.
So it's like Jeff.
Okay.
So it is Jeff.
So
you can just call him Jeff.
Speaking of other characters and things this reminds me of, that story reminds me a lot of the Road Warrior, where the Mad Max is not a good or a bad guy. And essentially, when he comes to them originally, they kind of throw him out because they have nothing they could use from him. And then basically it comes down to they really need a badass to help them defeat freaking Odorous Humongous or whatever his name is. The really ripped guy with the ski mask on. At least get away from him. And they've got and he is not a, Max definitely in his original, he lends more to being a good dude, but it's like obviously he's doing things that are, his car is booby trapped to blow up on anybody who reaches for the gas line, regardless of who it is and stuff like that. But
interesting.
Yeah, but Max is kind of like that character.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Except his name is Max.
Max. Yeah. They're like, what if we just said Max? So the Mandalorian being an Italian spaghetti western Star Wars story rather than American one, I feel like is really interesting. It's like we don't have many characters who are, Den is pretty good, but still, there are. Yeah. He's like, we see him locking up people he doesn't know and turning their bodies in for money, like first thing.
Yeah, because he's good because he's helping Baby Yoda, which we find cute.
Yes,
it's like he's doing the thing that we like.
Yeah.
But if he wasn't doing that, he would kind of just be like,
yeah, absolutely,
just a guy.
Well, and when you hear stories about him, like that the Prison Break episode where the dude where Bill Burr is talking to the dude from Sons of Anarchy about all this, and the dudes of Sons of Anarchy is telling him all the stuff that Den used to do.
Yeah, and liked it.
Yeah, and enjoyed it. He went for. But
so I kind of cut you off. I think when I wanted to make my aside about science fiction and Jeff the.
No, it's good. It's good.
And so you were talking about this as a. So give us, I guess, keep going on where you're going. I think you started to get back there. Where
am I going?
This is a spaghetti western, not just
yes.
an American western like the original Star Wars.
Yeah.
So.
And maybe I think we could have stood to had this story either way, but maybe the success of Rogue One maybe kind of prompted that a little bit, saying that we can finally actually do that with Star Wars, because I have a feeling when Obi-Wan comes out, that's going to be more American in the sense that it's good and bad, so just Mando, obviously a cowboy. Mm-hmm. It's like he's holding he's got his pistol and his rifle, but he's actually using a gun that vaporizes people, which as we know is outlawed in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Which do you remember the name of that, John?
I can find out real quick.
Yeah.
Find out. Hey Jamie, find that out.
And that brings us back to
I sent you something.
Oh, okay. Oh, cool. Poster for Lone Wolf. That's pretty dope.
Oh my gosh.
What do we got going on here? Sorry, there's just titty. So that let's talk about some like cool little Easter egg stuff like that, right? Or like little connections to old moments and stuff. So in Mando, him using that evaporating, or what do they call it? And so Empire Strikes Back, Vader comes up to specifically Boba and says,
no disintegration.
No disintegrations, yeah. So he and Mando is illegally using that firearm. And you hear people reference that gun, like in the last season, who's ever leading the charge on him when all the Mando showed up talks about that rifle.
Okay, really?
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
Wikipedia is saying it's a Amban phase pulse blaster or an Amban sniper rifle.
Okay.
It's basically like a disruptor. Yeah, I don't know. It disintegrates things. It's outlawed.
I would like to just make a connection here, just from a prop thing. You've got general blasters, like repeating blasters and stuff, appear to have no ammo limit.
Yeah.
When you see that, Han Solo has like little Tabonic cartridges that are supposedly
Chewie's
reload.
bowcaster has the...
Yeah, but you never see anybody reload. Yeah. Which, by the way, crossbows suck to reload. So
I have reloaded them.
Yeah, I mean, if you ever like, especially if you ever notice, like if you watch The Walking Dead, you never see him reload his crossbow.
You never see Daryl struggling
because he's just being a bat, and it's like no, you don't see him get out the cock and get down on his, it's horrible. So, sorry.
No,
back to the blaster.
Yeah.
But it's specifically a single shot blaster.
Yes.
Like they make a very specific point to show him reloading that. It's a breech barrel.
Yeah.
Like he loads a single cartridge in.
Yeah.
Fires, reloads.
And I wonder if that's like to insinuate that it's old.
Oh.
Maybe it's like a 500-year-old gun.
Also has the cartridges around his
on his thigh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which would make sense for being from a crouch position.
Sure.
You would.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So we do know that. Go ahead.
But I'm sorry. I want to make a point about that though. Like all of the early, like Sharps rifles and everything.
Yeah.
Those rolling block rifles. They have that breech break single shot.
Yeah.
It's not until you get the hint, like and I'm sorry, I'm probably getting the manufacturers who starts developing, but like Henry repeating is pretty for the lever action.
It was at least the best one because that's when people remember is regardless if it was the first.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've seen where they got the top barrel is the barrel, but then there's always that second tube below, which is the magazine, and you're feeding back, so you could have 10 shots or something in the magazine. But the first rifle, if you like, in True Grit, LaBeef has the Sharps carbine. It's a single shot, and it's accurate. It's I mean, not high powered what we consider today, but enough to knock a man down.
Yeah.
And I think so they're making a very conscious choice to make that a single shot rifle, which is a very early Western rifle that they would be using.
I'll be interesting to see if they coin that to age. Like, and it's like, is it because it's manufactured pre it being outlawed, which is at least before Empire. It's like I don't know if we have a new Disney canon. I would assume that like old Legends canon, if that existed, that it would be after the Mandalorian Wars, because that was probably when the Mandalorians came in and just devastated people with like guns that just made them disappear. But we do know like a modern blaster, or what we see most of the time, are gas cartridges, and the crystal is actually focusing, because I was always really confused about like what made the color of a blast different. Why is a TIE Fighter's green? Why is an X-Wing's red? So I guess we can assume it's different. It's like, and all the old canon we used to have on that is Legends now. So there's not like, as far as I know, new canon is like why a black. It's like we've got 40 years of old canon to like re-canon now and stuff like that. Which that was all written before.
Yeah.
But so a blaster technically does have some sort of crystal in it.
Okay.
And that focuses light, which ignites a gas bolt, which then fires from the blaster. So we can assume maybe different gas is used. Maybe the Empire at that point is like has some sort of like, maybe it's not as strong, but they can produce it faster.
Yeah.
Type thing going on, like a gas to diesel type thing.
Maybe it's more organic. That's why it's green.
Yeah. Maybe somehow it's solar generated.
Whoa.
Because they have the panels, so maybe those don't actually run out. Maybe they produce gas like themselves, which would be cool.
Because TIE Fighter wings aren't they some sort of solar?
Yeah, that's what powers them. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
Yeah. So but I say all that to say that to my knowledge, the first film example we see of a gun running out is actually in one of the live action Ewok movies.
Do tell.
Yes. And that one is called, I think, The Caravan of Hope. John, on that one?
The Christmas Caravan?
The Ewok. No, so the Christmas special.
The Christmas special?
No. The Ewok movie is the one with the giant Gorax. What's that one called?
Oh,
So going back to Mando, actually in the second Ewok movie, which if you just wouldn't mind looking up the titles of both of them there, John, I could speak a little more educated.
Yeah, we have Caravan of Courage.
Okay, so Caravan of Courage is when The timeline is pre when the Empire ends up on Endor, because none of that stuff is there. But there is a family of a mother, a father, son, and daughter that crash land on Endor, or the distant moon of Endor, or whatever it technically is. I think they're actually on a moon, aren't they, when they're on Endor? But the planet is Endor, but the moon is also Endor, and that's what's really confusing.
Wait,
yeah, I know.
The forest moon of Endor.
Yeah. So I know it's weird, but they're technically both. It's kind of like the Queequeg thing, where it's like, his species is Queequeg, but his name is also Queequeg.
That's a whole nother podcast.
And anytime they have a name, it's Queequeg. But so why not? I don't know. Anyway, but in that, the son and the daughter are rescuing their mother and father from the giant Gorax, and his gun is like basically depleted by the time he gets there. So he's like banging on the cartridge all the time to get it to. So it's like empty like the whole time.
Whoa.
Yeah, it hardly ever works. Like he's just got like a old piece of shit rifle that's like has a almost empty gas cartridge. Sort of like how you ever used an inhaler?
I have not.
So an inhaler, like if you freeze them, like or throw them in the fridge, it's like they get more because it's like a chemical inside. So like sometimes heat and stuff can create more of it. Because you think you have a vacuum tube.
Yeah.
So it's like in theory, if he's like out of shots, but like he can get it where he bangs on it or like gets it cold, then it fires again.
Okay.
Type thing, because it kind of operates almost like a battery in that sense.
Whoa.
So that's the first example I can think of that. So they do require and I'm pretty sure in Clone Wars we see a lot of reloading.
Okay.
But yeah, so they're gas is what they're actually emitting. It's not light. Like I feel like a lot of people. And which now you get into that weird thing like why can a lightsaber deflect a gas bolt?
Light and gas.
But it's a lightsaber, so. But so in the second Ewoks movie, which was called what, John?
Ewok Adventures.
Ewok Adventures. There is a castle with this weird skeletal looking dude running it, and he's threatening the planet.
Skatoa.
Yeah, and his cronies ride blurgs, which is where the blurgs in episode 2 come from.
I did not know that.
Mando. Yeah, where they're riding them with what's his name? I've spoken. Quill.
They're also in several episodes of Rebels, if I'm not mistaken.
Cool. Yeah, so they probably went from Ewok to Rebels to Mando.
Whoa.
So they might not have made it in Mando if it hadn't been in Rebels, but
on Ryloth, I believe.
Interesting. So we've now seen those on.
That's the Twi'lek planet, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've now seen those on wild on several planets, which is kind of interesting.
Why is being a giant tick with tiny little T-Rex arms such an evolutionary advantage?
I have a theory on this actually.
Please do tell.
So you know how the Spanish brought the hogs over during the 1700s, and that's why the United States has all the hog problems. Like even in the South of Missouri, we have these wild hog problems, right? So the Spaniards brought those over, which
for $35, you can get a dog costume that is a bantha. It's got horns and a little Tusken that rides on it.
Just order it extra large for Toby, and we'll have him.
Because they brought.
Oh my god,
that is amazing.
Yes, just get it. We'll find something to put on. Put it on Trash Dog and send it around the neighborhood. What are you gonna say?
But they brought horses too.
Yeah,
so horses. I didn't know they brought hogs. Interesting.
Yeah. So the hogs. So that's actually a lot of the birth of like pirates, right? So you have people end up. Well, we always had pirates. The idea of just a thief on the water, but what we think of as the golden age of pirates comes. So actually, the term buccaneer comes from buccaneer. And a person who is a buccaneer jerks meat. Better my buccaneer myself. So in Spain they brought brought the hogs over, so there was food here. So when they come here, they just let them but there ended up people staying here, and that was now their job. And via capitalism.
What a job!
Yeah,
jerking meat.
Yeah, they'd found a way to make money off of that, right?
Okay.
So a buccaneer becomes the buccaneers, and that ends up becoming what we associate with the golden age of pirates down there. But I figure that's stuff with blurgs, bantha, which I don't know if we've seen them on many other planets, but any of those And Blurg, honestly, look like you could eat the shit out of them. That's why I would say they're everywhere. Yeah, they look like something you'd probably... But every example of them, we see people riding them for some reason. But, you know, I don't know. But yeah.
Dude, can you imagine riding a cow? You're like, you know what? When it runs out of fuel, I'll get a fill up myself.
Yeah, no kidding.
Dude.
Yeah.
That'd be terrifying, though. Imagine, like, riding a longhorn steer into battle. Mm-hmm. It's like... You wouldn't be moving very fast.
Yeah.
But look at them horns.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. If you get them close enough to gore somebody.
Oh, baby.
And we have, in that first Ewok movie, Caravan of Courage, we have the largest Ewok to ever existed.
Oh, yeah.
And for some reason, he doesn't... Oh! I know why he doesn't fight on that anymore now that I can think of it, but I don't want to spoil anything. But
I don't think anybody's watching that movie. You can go ahead and spoil it.
So also Disney does not acknowledge those, but they are the only other live action Star Wars movies that are not like canon.
Wow.
Like they are the only ones that. But I think they were made for TV. But so his name is so Lo-Ray is the sorcerer who they tell you that is actually a female, and on Return of the Jedi I don't think they let on that Lo-Ray is.
Wait, Return of the Jedi?
Yeah, look, because Lo-Ray's in that movie as an Ewok. Well, she's one of the Ewoks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Chief Chirpa, right?
Okay.
Wicket's there, obviously. Wicket's father's name is Deej.
Okay.
And the biggest Ewok's name is...
He's huge.
Chukatroph.
Chukatroph.
And he is huge. And the Ewoks ride ponies in that movie.
Okay.
And he is on a pony at one point, but it's just a grown man in an Ewok outfit just blasting through the woods on this pony. But Chukatroph dies fighting the giant Gorax to save those parents, and he's the only Ewok that doesn't make it. But so that's why he's not at the Battle of Endor. And he was like their greatest warrior.
That explains it.
But this was the one I was saying. He kind of has this weird Bombadil thing going on about him, where he's way bigger than everybody else. He lives out in the woods by himself. He doesn't let the problems of the Ewoks mess with him. And that Ewok movie is based off of Lord of the Rings.
Kind of like Jephthah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say based off Lord of the Rings. It's more like so that the premise of that one is they go around and they have to collect all the greatest Ewoks to do this journey. So it's kind of like Lord of the Rings.
Okay. A fellowship of.
Yeah, a fellowship of Ewoks, and there's another story that it makes me think of where they have to go find like. I guess in a lot of ways it's a lot like Seven Samurai because that's their deal is they have to go. They go find all these. Like this is the greatest archer he knows, and this is like. You know, he goes and finds these. So it might be kind of a hodgepodge of... Because there's a sorceress.
Yeah.
And... but yeah, so Chukatroph is sort of this character who doesn't bother himself with the normal, but he's bigger, and they convince him to come and help. But so in the second one, the Ewok Adventures, there is a sorceress. Like a full-fledged sorceress. Like a female human. Whereas Lo-Ray is sort of kind of like a Ewok sorceress, so it's like... She just like, and so that like makes water hard to walk on. Like you can walk on it and stuff. Like it's pretty Jesus-like. But so in that one, there is fan theory that she is somehow related to the sorceress that is related to Maul. Is that his mom? What's the story on that? Like, or they're just like they're all kind of have this mother-child thing. Is
the
that
Night Sisters?
Yeah. Which are also in that Jedi Fallen Order game, but. You get that thing with because she can turn into a raven.
Okay, but she's a human.
Yes, but she's a human. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think there's some like they think she might somehow be related to that type of magic or something. You know.
Okay.
And I think in Jedi Fallen Order we see a sister who is not whatever that race. What race? Because she's not Zabrak, right? The one that is like the mother to.
Are you talking about the witches?
Yeah, the witches who are. They don't have to be a specific race, right? You got Maul and then Savage, which is just like Savage Opress is basically his name.
Yeah.
The Witches of Dathomir?
Yeah.
What
do they have to be the same race? Like, are they all one race?
I believe... I thought so, but...
I feel like in Fallen Order, the one that you see is not the same race, but maybe not.
I'd be really curious to know, if either of you guys know, is Dathomir, like, is that their whole setup they got there? Is just, like, all the Night Sisters over here and all the dudes over here? or is that just like is that like the Death Watch of Dathomir, and like they've got like other normal Zabraks living somewhere?
I think there are definitely. That's not all the Zabraks.
Okay,
but
so like I've never seen any regular like just at a wood shop.
Well, you got chairs. The one who's the Jedi who gets offed by Sidious.
Oh yeah.
So he's a. There's one that's a pilot and sort of a mechanic in the Knights of the Old Republic game, like the second one. Okay. But he, I don't think he's canon anymore. But
didn't exist.
But I think it's.
Sorry, it says here that that the Zabrak's homeworld is not Dathomir, and that is just a colony. So
that's fair. Yeah. Kind of like how we were talking about the Jawas the other day, how we thought they were pretty native to Tatooine, but then we see the off-world ones in Mando with the more black cloaks that Mando vaporizes a couple of them.
Zuka. Wow. Yeah, that'd be an interesting origin story, just to know like where they come from, why are they always in sand crawlers? You know what? John's about to lay the knowledge here.
Yeah.
Lay it on me, John.
Oh well, I mean, the reason they're in sandcrawlers is you basically have to go back to the history of Tatooine and what it was like before. What was that race that ruled the galaxy like before the Old Republic?
They've got the like.
They look like hammerhead sharks or something.
I don't remember. Yeah, but I know you're talking.
They're
about.
Extinct now, I'm pretty sure. But they basically, to put a little Halo lore in, they glassed Tatooine.
Really?
Yeah. So all of the it made it a desert. When all the glass broke up, it became a desert.
Okay.
And then you get so all the groups of people that were still alive on the planet either became the ones that stayed above ground became it was a very harsh environment.
Okay.
Those evolved into Tusken Raiders or Sand People.
Whoa.
And the Jawas were the other half of the planet that stayed underground.
What?
And they got smaller because they weren't out, getting exercise and sunlight and all that.
So they're all really sensitive either way, though.
Yeah. And
that's why they.
So then, at some point in the history of Tatooine, I believe in the Old Republic, there was mining companies came to Tatooine and tried to mine it. Didn't work out. Or I don't remember if it worked out or not, but basically they gave up and they left all their equipment. Mm-hmm. So there were two types of sand crawlers. One of which was Corellian, I believe. Those must have not. You actually see one in Knights of the Republic when you're on Tatooine. Those must have not worked out so well because there's none of them left. But all the other sand crawlers that you see are just old mining vehicles that were abandoned, which had fusion reactors, so that's why they still have fuel. Mm-hmm. And then it's one of the only instances where you see a character in Star Wars. I mean, we were talking about this the other day. Make a vehicle or something not mystical part of their culture. Because sandcrawlers are just 100% part of Jawa culture now. They couldn't. They have colonies in certain places, but half the colony will stay underground at their little base, and then the other half goes out and does stuff on Sandcrawler. Some of them are completely nomadic, and they only live on the Sandcrawler, and that's just different tribes.
Can you imagine, like, because all the Sandcrawlers we've seen are probably they're like Oldsmobiles that have been put back together for 500 years. Like, what a new one would have looked like rolling off the line, just shiny.
So that is fascinating, and I mean, it makes 100% sense as far as the goblins in Moria, that live underground. The evolution is going to tend towards the smaller and smaller, being more effective.
Big eyes.
Yeah, bigger
which are
eyes.
actually just jewels that they put in there.
On a Jawa?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's why they have different, the ones on, what is it, Navara? Is that the planet they're on?
No, they go to a different one.
I'm not sure on that.
Navarro is the one where Grief Karga is.
Well, like how their eyes are red.
Yeah.
That was, you could, each tribe had a different colored jewel that they put in their eye.
That is so cool.
So there's red ones, orange ones, yellow ones.
Is that Legends at this point, probably? Or is it kind of mix and match? Just the whole Tatooine, Sandcrawler.
No, I'm pretty sure that's
Tuskens.
canon.
Is it? Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Where does that come from?
What's that?
Like, where does that... I'm always curious when
like
it says,
where-
like, when it's canon. Like, what decree does Disney put out that says, like, thus it is writ?
I think just that they haven't said that it's not. Maybe.
I do think there is some stuff where they've just kind of like, somehow, like, Wikipedia maybe, they've just said that's cool to stay. You know, stuff like that. Like,
wow.
But...
I'm trying to find the
in the same way that, like, why do we know that Django's not? Like, there hasn't been anything to say that. It's just like it's been stated by Disney somewhere.
You know, it's
it was the I'm sorry to interrupt again. It was the Zerka Corporation was the one that was mining Tatooine, and they were the ones that left. So the Zerka was one faction, and the Corellia Mining Corporation was the other one, and those are the ones that look like sail barges, but you don't see. You know, there's none of them left.
I would just like to say the fact that mining companies are such a big part of the home town.
Yeah.
Of Tatooine, which is a desert, is like that's in and of itself is a pretty Western thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, John, can you find out what year Dune came out? The book.
Oh, here we go.
Because this is an you know.
Here we go.
All right, but Dune was I think is still like considered to be one of the best selling sci-fi books of all time, and it has so much to do with ecology of the planet. I think you could say that is a sci-fi or actual science fiction book. And there was 6 original ones. What year was that?
1965.
1965. Okay,
Dude, same year as For a Few Dollars More.
dude,
That's kind of interesting. Yeah,
it is. I don't think you could say that's so political and happening on such a high level.
Yeah.
I don't think you could
draw a line there.
You couldn't say that that's Western in any way. But
Yeah.
One of the things that you find out about that desert planet. And people say that, Lucas stole a lot from Herbert as far as, it's the young boy in a desert planet and he's the chosen one somehow. And I think those themes are deeper.
It's like everything ever, though, too. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, he stole it from the Matrix, too, then. It's like...
But that planet was, had in the past been a garden, but had become a desert, and they make a point to repop. Like they gather water and they turn it back into a garden, and that kills the worms that are like where you get the spice that everybody needs. The spice must flow. So like eventually it takes back over the planet and it becomes a desert again. And it's like there's something about that has to be a desert.
The that's one of big Alex Jones's big rants on that last Logan is that if we let global warming take hold, the deserts will grow plants again and we won't have to worry about anything. And shout out Alex Jones if you want to come on our podcast. I'll give you my address and you can come over.
We is you think so? What you're saying is Alex Jones is in league with the Tusken Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
They smell
like silver.
Well, does anybody else have any last tidbits they'd like to say? I feel like we've probably rambled enough for everybody at this point, but
nothing that can't wait till the next one.
yeah. We'll think about it a little bit more. Maybe dive into some other stuff next time.
But you got anything you want us to talk about too? You could
leave
it in the comments.
Leave it in the comments. Tell us how stupid we are and all the stuff we said. We love talking Star Wars and westerns, and I'd like to just go into every. I wouldn't even mind just doing like here's everybody in this western who they are in the Star Wars thing, but
dude, that'd be sweet.
Well, what do you say? We'll see you guys on the other side.
Well, bye.
We got both kinds here. Heavy and western. Doing, 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 doing.